Take
Okay,
two.
Take two. So one of the interesting twists of this indictment, which was returned last night by the Fulton County grand jury, is that it has been assigned to the Honorable Scott McAfee. At least his name is entered on the pleading. So it looks like Judge McAfee has been assigned this case. What's interesting about that is that Scott McAfee is the most recent, the most junior judge in the Fulton County judiciary. He is a very bright guy. I believe he's an Emory Law School graduate. He is a former Fulton County District Attorney, a former United States Attorney.
I forgot that he went to the U.S. Attorney's Office
Went to the
briefly.
U.S.
That's where
Attorney's.
he went.
He was a former Assistant Attorney General in the state of Georgia, and he was recently appointed to the bench.
By Governor
Brian Kemp.
Which is interesting, too, because, I guess as it relates to, you can't really judge shop in general, as Donald Trump is learning, but in Fulton County, when I think about the spread of who he could have, there's, I don't know how many judges there are, 15, 18, maybe 15, because...
Yeah, there's a bunch.
I don't know, there's a bunch, but, there's a lot of different, based on who you get on the wheel, when a case gets indicted, it just gets automatically assigned to the next judge.
So talk a little bit about what the wheel is. Tell them, it's a random selection.
So basically, like when a case gets indicted or is accused, in order to try to keep the dockets in each courtroom even, there's basically, I've never seen, it's not a real wheel, but it just automatically gets assigned to the next judge, so that like each case gets kind of like you're dealing cards.
Or a roulette wheel. You just spin it and the judge gets it.
Yeah. So basically, it ended up in front of Judge McAfee, who I was actually in front of on Friday.
And me last week also.
The lovely judge. He's going to be thrust into the spotlight here.
Yeah, the point is that he's a very bright guy and he's a fair man, and I don't believe he's politically inclined, although I don't know that. But this is a complicated case. Georgia RICO is a hybrid of the federal RICO statute. It's more inclusive, it's broader, and Judge Scott McAfee will have his hands full sorting this out. We're going to assume, and I believe rightfully so, that all of the defendants will hire very competent counsel.
And fight like hell.
And fight like hell. And as Bruce Harvey said, there's going to be some firebomb throwers in there who are just going to try to disrupt the proceeding. We know that it's a pattern of the Trump litigation to delay and disrupt the judicial process. So Judge McAfee, the learned Judge McAfee, will have his hands full sorting out this case.
He thought he was going to have to. We were discussing how we have a murder trial in his courtroom coming up. I don't know when it's going to happen, but now I think that may have maybe been the oldest case on his calendar, but something that he was maybe not looking forward to trying a multi-co-defendant gang murder. But now he's got a multi-co-defendant, and by multi-co-defendant, about 19, did you say? 19 individuals, 41 counts.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So the groundwork is, as Rachel said, this long investigatory process has now come to a conclusion.
And what this means, let's talk about what this means. So each of these individuals, now that an indictment has been brought against them, what does that mean? Is Donald Trump going to be turning himself in today?
Well, interesting comment. Mm-hmm. The district attorney gave the defendants, all of them, till I think a week from Friday to turn themselves in voluntarily. That means that they must surrender themselves to the Fulton County Sheriff. They must be fingerprinted. They must be mugshotted, which I believe will be the first time Donald Trump has been mugshotted formally, and post bond, or have a bond hearing. Now, I don't know if the warrants that are going out for the individuals have a preset bond.
They usually don't.
They usually don't.
So in our experience,
or they'll have to go before a judge.
Yeah, our experience, when somebody has an arrest warrant out for them or an indictment has been issued against them, what ends up happening is they have to turn themselves in, and there's been no way for us. Maybe it's a special circumstance if he's the former president of the United States, but there's really no way for us to try to work out a bond with anyone before. It's never, in recent years, I can't speak, but their office is not in the business of, discussing a preset bond amount for someone as like in exchange for us turning them in. That doesn't happen.
And our Fulton County Sheriff, Pat Labat, said he's making no special conditions for Donald Trump or anyone else. Yeah, so they're going to have to turn themselves in. They're going to have to be mugshotted, and the way it works in Fulton County, you have to sit for at least a day, maybe two, and often much longer to get before a judge for a bond hearing. So this will be an interesting experience for many of these former Republican and White House officials. Mark Meadows was the chief of staff of the President of the United States. He's named in this indictment. Rudy Giuliani, of course, was the former mayor of New York. He's going to sit in a jail in Fulton County and wait for a bond hearing.
And so what's so interesting about Fulton County is right now, so aside from the Donald Trump indictment, so that's what we should talk about. So aside from Donald Trump, aside from Young Thug, what's been going on in Fulton County and most of the national news or international news about Fulton County Jail, about the Fulton County criminal justice system, is that Sheriff Pat Labat, that his jails are being investigated by the DOJ, by the Department of Justice, for civil rights violations. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, another individual died in the jail.
Death.
I think I read there's been 21 deaths in 20 months. We obviously have a case pending against Fulton County, the Fulton County Sheriff, for an individual's death in the jail. It's not a place that's safe. I mean, it's specifically not safe. Nobody wants to go to jail. All jails aren't fun or comfortable, but this is a different level of dysfunction within the jail. So having these type of high-profile individuals, I wonder if they'll let them go to the North Fulton jail. I don't know what they're going to do.
That's an interesting comment. And listen, I have clients who have been what we call down the road in state and federal prison, and they ask me, Mr. Kane, get me out of here. Get me out of the Fulton County Jail.
Send me to prison.
Send me to prison.
Yeah.
Get me in the joint.
So,
I want to get out of here. It's dangerous, Mr. Kane. I don't want to be here. So Rachel is not minimizing the dysfunction and the dangers of the Fulton County Jail.
No, and what the Fulton County Jail is supposed to be is a place where you hold people pending trial, assuming they can't make bond, or people who are serving less than a year in jail. In Fulton County, due to the coronavirus, but also just the slow pace at which the system moves, people are sitting in what is meant to be, simply like a holding cell, basically, for people as they wait for their trial. People are sitting there for years and years with no access to the outdoors, and among other things. I mean, it's overcrowded. It's understaffed. People are on a daily basis getting. I mean, I had a client intubated a few weeks ago, got shanked in the back. Intubated. I just mean he was in the hospital. He couldn't breathe for himself. He almost lost his life.
And what was the cause of that?
Being stabbed by gang members.
Mm-hmm.
The jail's out of control. I do think it's interesting though that, and I'm happy for Pat Labat, he's a nice guy, but that he's using this opportunity to basically. It's good publicity for him in light of the horrible publicity that for this entire year he's really been dealing with.
And we should note that Pat Labat is a recently elected jailer, sheriff in Fulton County, and he inherited the dysfunction of the Fulton County Jail. And he's trying his best to resolve it, and he's asked for money, and I think it's been allocated to build a multi-billion-dollar facility. So it's not an accusation against Sheriff Labat, it's just is what it is. Rachel and I deal with it every day with clients and their parents.
Yeah,
and
people
their
don't
loved
want
ones.
to be there.
They don't want to be there. So now we're looking at these Republican
Adding Giuliani to the mix.
officials. Yeah, Rudy Giuliani, the law and order mayor, former mayor of Manhattan, of New York City, now will be spending a little time in our Fulton County Jail.
Okay, so here's what I want to start with. Let's start off with the racketeering count. I don't know how far we're going to get today.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what that is.
Okay, talk about what that is.
So I've downloaded the indictment and I've printed it out and started to read it. And what's interesting to me is that normally when you have not normally, in all racketeering cases, you have an enterprise. And it may be the YSL gang or the Mandolin cartel gang or the Gotti gang, whatever. This one just calls it the enterprise. Like when Richard Nixon was president, it was called the CREEP, the Committee to Re-elect the President. They didn't do a RICO charge on him, but that was the enterprise that was coordinating the burglary at the Watergate. This indictment just talks about the enterprise.
And I think with the goal of calling it the enterprise is because this is such a politically infused a politically infused issue. If you look at how many Republicans are responding to this, or at least Trump supporters, and there's division within the Republican Party. It's not the entire Republican Party that participated in this, and I think that that's clear. Who was it yesterday? Was it Duncan? Was it Jeff Duncan? Somebody got on TV. Who was our lieutenant governor? I should know, but I don't.
Yeah.
But our lieutenant governor got on TV, and he's a Republican, and he's like, listen, like in order to move forward, the Republican Party needs to be honest with themselves and
that would be
and then rebuild.
That'd be
This is not the entire Republican Party. This is just a faction. The enterprise is a faction of the GOP. It is.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit more about RICO. RICO is a conspiracy, and it involves an enterprise. And the easiest way for me to comprehend it is it's a wheel, and the enterprise is the hub, the center of the wheel, and that enterprise has an illegal goal or an illegal mission. And each spoke in that wheel is an individual participant in the overall conspiracy.
Making the wheel go around.
It makes the wheel go around. It makes the conspiracy work. And the goal has to be illegal. Now, some conduct may be illegal prima facie on its face, but in reality, it is illegal. And we'll go through that in depth later. But we just want to get a more broad understanding of conspiracy and RICO. So the district attorney's office in Fulton County, Fannie Willis, brought this charge primarily as a RICO indictment.
And the RICO indictment, it includes acts or offenses that occurred over the course of a period of time. So looking at this, so we got November 4th, 2020, which was the election, through September 15th, 2022, which is interesting to me because
that means that
there's nothing that's happened really since the special grand jury hearing. That's what I was trying to figure out before. So we just have the period of time that the enterprise is working together for the common criminal goal, the center of the center of the wheel, November 4th, 2020 through September 15th, 2022. Okay, so it's almost 2 years, though, that they're engaging in what she is alleging to be an enterprise unlawfully conspiring and endeavoring to conduct and participate in a pattern of racketeering activity. So as part of count one, which is the overarching count, I wonder who drafted this within their office.
They did a pretty good job.
I know they did. They did. I'm sure they had help.
I've read a good bit of it.
Okay, this is important. The introduction. Defendant Donald Trump lost the United States presidential election held on November 3rd, 2020. One of the states that he lost was Georgia. I'm sure he hates reading this.
But this is the truth.
But it's the truth. Trump and the other defendants who are charged in the indictment are alleged to have refused to accept that Trump lost, and knowingly and willfully conspired together to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump, to subvert democracy, basically. Mm-hmm.
To violate the rule of law.
To violate the rule of law. And when you think about rules of law, there's like speeding, which is like who cares necessarily, but when you think about an election, the fundamental function of democracy starts with fair elections. It's such a fundamental.
That's the bedrock of
it's a bedrock of democracy. And no, I don't believe any president thus far, except for the one alleged here, has gone to such lengths to subvert democracy. That's really what it is. That's what's so okay. And their common plan, obviously, to change the outcome of the election.
But it's an unlawful common plan and scheme.
Well, because we're going to see we're going to learn about what they did in furtherance of this common goal.
So, but hold on. Now, what's unique about RICO is that you have to commit 2 predicate acts. So the indictment alleges numerous predicate acts. So for any individual to be found guilty, they must have participated in at least 2 predicate acts which were illegal. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
It's not like I speeded down the road or I sold weed one time. You've got to do whatever it is. It could be 2 very separate incidents of criminal activity.
Well, and so those are the kind of defenses that somebody would have to a RICO case, is that what I was doing independent of all these other people and independent of a common goal. That would be your argument, I guess, that I had nothing to do with what they were doing. It's very difficult, though, as you can imagine, when you're all charged together, and likely the case will not be severed, that the jury gets to hear about everything under the sun around the
Let me add this one factual issue. The indictment alleges that the term of the conspiracy was November 4th, 2020 through September 15th, 2022. Now, it's just been recently brought to my attention that there's a Coffee County chapter or part of this conspiracy, And I didn't read about it and didn't heard about it before the past couple of weeks. So apparently the district attorney's office and the investigators had wind of some of the indicted conspirators and some unindicted co-conspirators that were trying to affect voting and voting patterns in Coffee County, Georgia. And we'll get into that in the body of the indictment.
Okay, so I think this is really good that we're doing this. So, yeah, a RICO indictment is a very intense document that I don't know how. I wonder how many people worked on this and how long they went over this, because so before they start getting into the individual counts, aside from count 1, the racketeering count requires that they lay out that the prosecutor really lays out the enterprise, the common methods,
scheme.
And then there's the substantive criminal charges, which are the counts 2 through 41. This is all just about the racketeering count as we're discussing it right now. I just want to be clear that what we're about to discuss, the manner and methods that the enterprise used generally, this is all part of proving count 1, the racketeering, the RICO charge. The individual charges kind of come later. They're separate. Okay, so do you want to start with the false? So one of the things that this DA's office is alleging that many of the defendants engaged in are false statements to and solicitation of state legislative representatives.
So hit the pause button here. You can expect the primary defense will be First Amendment freedom of speech. So when you say the statement was false, they're going to say, but I have a First Amendment right to speak. And I have a First Amendment to speak the truth, but I also have a First Amendment right to speak a lie. And they're basically correct that they don't have to tell the truth. It is when you commit a false statement and do an act, which is a predicate act in the indictment, that is in furtherance of the RICO scheme, that is to overturn the indictment, that it becomes criminal. So false statements in and of themselves are generally not a crime, generally.
And what they're alleging here is that the purpose of the false statements was actually to persuade Georgia legislators to reject lawful electoral votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors. Yeah, so that's so members of this enterprise, these co-defendants, corruptly tried to solicit specific legislators to
change the electors.
To change the electors so that they're not casting proper votes, basically?
Yes, to commit a fraud. So look, if I went to Enterprise and I know the guy that ran the franchise and I said, rent me a couple trucks here because I'm going to haul some dope from McAllen, Texas. Well, renting the truck isn't necessarily a crime for the Enterprise guy. But when I tell him I'm going to use it to haul dope, then he's involved in ostensibly.
Why he's doing it.
Yeah, then he's ostensibly involved in a conspiracy with me. So that's what they're saying here in this introductory paragraphs to the indictment.
Just so I'm on, I guess I'm a lawyer, but I'm not as familiar with how electors work. So basically, there's a number of electors that are supposed to cast votes on behalf of the people and how they voted.
Yes.
And so what the Republican, some of these defendants were trying to get.
That's the gravamen of this case, and you'll see as you go through the indictment that the plan, the scheme of John Eastman, Donald Trump, Chesbrough, and Giuliani, and others was to go to the states, and this indictment goes way beyond Georgia. It goes to Pennsylvania, it goes to Michigan, it goes to Arizona, and it goes to other states, and it contacts the Republican parties in those jurisdictions to contact the electors in those jurisdictions and to create false documents and create false electors. It's very complicated and very criminal if true. I mean, it's a wild breach of the law if it's true and provable.
And you just imagine how they did it, because if the team that you want to win for is saying that the other team is committing fraud or they're winning unfairly, if you're being convinced by the people at the top that this was fraudulent and you're doing this on their behalf, I'm not saying that. I could just see how they would solicit these type of electors who want him to win to participate in this. I'm saying, so that's what makes it really.
It's a completely dishonest scheme, and it subverts democracy. It goes to the bedrock of our system of justice.
Sore losers, is I think what we call this is the sore loser RICO case.
I mean, when you think of the basic preamble of rule of law, these guys were just ignoring it and subverting it.
They're above it. They think that they're above it. So in addition to trying to solicit state legislators, they were also making false statements and soliciting high-ranking state officials. So we're talking about the governor, the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia.
I remembered that. I forgot
Yeah,
about
so that everybody forgot that, and it's in the indictment, and they don't really go into detail, but his name was Pack, and he was the acting United States Attorney General for the Northern District for the Northern District of Georgia. He received a phone call, I believe, from Donald Trump, saying, "Just say the election was corrupt, and we'll take it from there. The members of the House of Representatives will cover it." And the guy resigned, which was the right thing to do, because basically the President of the United States was asking him to join the conspiracy. And the guy was clever enough and had enough integrity and enough ethical backbone to say, I'm out of here.
Yeah, he opted out.
I'm out of here. And so he resigned. So it's, Trump goes on and on about this, it's the perfect phone call. But there was more than one phone call.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of activity following up this phone call. We'll get into it in detail in the indictment. With Giuliani and this person Ellis were traveling, this woman Ellis, were traveling all over the country, meeting Republicans in various state governments, attempting to get them to subvert the election results, the presidential results in their jurisdictions and in their states.
I'd say in the past 5 years, Giuliani's had a really rough public persona. I saw Borat too. Did you see that?
I saw Giuliani in the hotel room with Borat's daughter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's had a rough go, but I mean, that's what...
Let it go. The booze looks like it's got to him.
It's a long nosedive. It's a slow nosedive.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, so this is actually kind of getting into the meat of it, though. So we know that Donald Trump made a call asking these other officials to find all these votes. But now we're getting into a behavior where the state's alleging that they created and distributed false electoral college documents. That's pretty bad. I mean, again, that goes...
So to create a false document is fraud.
Yeah. And it wasn't just creating a false document to have that document exist. It was so that it could cast false electoral college votes.
Yeah, that's pretty... if true, significant. That's creating a fraudulent document. That's like saying, I own this house, and creating a false deed, or a bill of sale for an automobile. A false document, material misrepresentation of material facts is fraud, and now it's criminal.
Well, and so, interestingly, I guess time and memory changes things. The electoral college votes were actually cast.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying to undo it.
Yeah.
But note, which is interesting, and it's going to be interesting for me as a lawyer. It says in the pleading being the indictment, that similar schemes were executed by members of the enterprise in Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So how does that affect you as a defendant in Georgia? Now, that seems like it's wildly prejudicial to me. You're bringing in this evidence from illegal criminal conduct in multiple other states into my trial in Georgia. I'm
sure that'll be litigated.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. And if I was the attorney for one of the co-defendants, I'd move to strike many of the paragraphs in this complaint. And I don't know, again, this is where the Honorable Judge Scott McAfee is going to have to put on his learning cap, because RICO is a very broad, expansive, it has very loose evidentiary rulings. And can the state bring in evidence of purported criminal activity in multiple other states?
And it's not specified, so I don't even know what they're talking about.
Well, they go into it in the indictment. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's Giuliani and others. Yep.
Yeah,
talk about similar transactions.
Okay. So in Georgia, basically, there's
then the federal 404
and federal. There's this law that basically says that if there's a similar transaction, that if you're currently being accused of something and there's been a prior similar act that's similar enough and temporally, so it's in time close enough to one another, that it makes sense that it would provide probative evidence of someone's guilt instead of just like a character assassination. If this was basically that he got drunk and slept with hookers in Vegas, that would be not a similar transaction because it has nothing to do with what's being alleged in the indictment. But if they're saying that similar documents were created in other states to engage in the same type of behavior, it makes it more likely that the behavior that they engaged in here was exactly that as well, and that so it'll likely come in. I agree with you. It's kind of inappropriate in the indictment.
But the bedrock of this rule, it's a hybrid of Federal Rule 404. It's called 404B. is that it's prejudicial. But the reasoning of the appellate courts is that the probative value outweighs the prejudicial effect, which really is an illogical maxim because prejudice is prejudice.
They let it in here.
And Georgia honors similar transactions. So now you've got these 19 or whatever, these co-defendants charged with violating the law in Georgia, and their charging document says, and by the way, the enterprise was doing it all over the country. Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, all over the place.
Yeah, and they weren't doing other random illegal activity. They were doing the exact same illegal activity, which is why it's similar enough that I think it comes in. But okay,
we'll
that'll be
for Judge McAfee to decide.
And I didn't know this. There was a Fulton County election worker that I guess was harassed by.
That's Ruby Freeman.
Yeah, by several of the co-defendants who basically out of state, in state, harassing her, intimidating her, and trying to get her to say that she rigged the election.
Well, that was a Giuliani scheme where he said that she had done something illegal with ballots, and she had not. Apparently, her and her daughter.
Well, is that the Coffee County one, or is that
no? That's Fulton County.
Okay.
And the lady's life was threatened. Her daughter's life was disrupted.
Did they sue? Someone sued.
They did sue. They did testify before the Select Committee in D.C., and now they're named as predicate acts in the indictment that the conduct well, it wasn't just accuse them. Apparently, they sent operatives, the defendants sent operatives to the woman to intimidate her, and she wouldn't lie for them.
Okay, so now we're moving on. So we got the intimidating election workers, then we get the solicitation of high-ranking U.S. Department of Justice officials. So again, we got state legislators. They're going after. We got state, like high-ranking officials, and now we
had the governor.
That's somebody. The governor, the
Brian
lieutenant,
Kemp, the Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. You had the Attorney General in the Northern District of Georgia.
And now we're talking about. U.S. Department of Justice officials, and we have Donald Trump within the indictment. There's a quote from him saying,
"This is nuts.
I can't even." Just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman.
Yeah. So that
Quote,
tells you something
unquote.
about the Republican congressman.
I mean, that he's trying to include. I'm sure there's Republican congressmen that don't like being caught up in this, because there are some Republicans who are saying we have to deal with the fact that we had a bad guy, like this bad egg in our party. We can't pretend that this is the Democrats' fault. Mm-hmm. We can't pretend that they're lying. The truth is the truth. He shouldn't have done this. And if we're going to have any integrity, we have to accept it and then build. I really believe that. I'm not a Republican, but I'm just like, come on.
I agree with
Let's
that.
all be reasonable. Okay, and then we have him soliciting the Vice President of the United States. Again, we're not talking like soliciting, somebody on the street corner. We're talking about the Vice President.
So expect Mike Pence to be a witness in Fulton County Superior Court.
But notably, he was not charged in this indictment.
Because he did the right thing. He didn't go along with the conspiracy.
And then we're moving on to some of the more, what I think, like obvious criminal things where they're unlawfully breaching the election equipment. And I don't know if that's part of the computer trespass and stuff, but in Fulton County, they're saying that several of these co-defendants got together and conspired to unlawfully access the secure voting equipment, and they stole data, including images of ballots, of the software, and of personal voter information. Then they distributed it to members within this enterprise, including members in other states. So they're basically, Donald Trump's making the statement that this election was corrupt, and now it has to be corrupt in order for, in his mind, he has to create the corruption where there is no corruption. And so that's what this is.
If the allegations are true, he did.
Yeah, if the allegations are true, he did. But by stealing the data and trespassing on computers, and trying to get
documents,
and trying to claim that election workers are, corrupted. He needs all that to be true in order for his statement to the U.S. Department of Justice officials to be true. But it's not.
It's not true.
No. So that's why it's such an enterprise.
According to the indictment.
According to the indictment, going very far. The lengths that are being taken are.
Yeah. So just get back for a moment to what Rachel said about the Republican Party. It's not all inclusive. Apparently, you've got Republicans who didn't go along with the scheme, and some of the more notable ones are Brian Kemp and the Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. But also note that Mitch Romney, senator from Utah,
And Mike Pence.
And Mike Pence didn't go along with it. Compare that to Senator Lee from Utah, who did go along with it. He's a constitutional scholar, and he was very much in with Mark Meadows and what can I do to help subvert this election. So I guess the point being that you say the Republican Party, but there are also many in the Republican Party that did honor the rule of law and did not want to go along with the illegal conduct of Donald Trump and the other co-conspirators.
I mean, this is just, it's like history repeating itself. It's dangerous when someone like Donald Trump says something and people, if you like someone, you want to believe them. And I think people that believed in him, his loyal followers, when he says things like that, they start believing it, and then they create the story, and you just have tons of people now saying this is a political prosecution. And honestly, if these things are true, it's not. It's so that we can all have if it were reversed, I would hope that they would go after the Democrats.
Yeah,
this is terrible.
Absolutely.
The allegations are absolutely terrible. I wonder how Barron feels today.
Yeah.
Poor Barron.
You want to start wrapping this up, and we'll go more into this because we're now into the acts.
Okay.
The predicate acts, which are numerous.
We're still in count one, but we'll take a break.
And I just wanted to add this, which I heard District Attorney Fani Willis say in her news conference last night, and it's important for me to remember this. An indictment is nothing more than a probable cause accusation. It is really a sophisticated traffic ticket. Somebody accuses you of something. It took a grand jury probable cause to bring this charging document. But the real merit will be whether the state of Georgia, through the district attorney's office, can convict or can convince a jury and convict the defendants by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So
she said that last night?
DA Willis said it, and I admire her for doing it, commend her for bringing that to the public's attention, and I likewise would also.
She should say that about Young Thug.
She should say it about everybody.
I know, but I'm saying she doesn't really. But
I mean, I try to say it in every jury trial. Like this document, this voluminous document, is really nothing more than a sophisticated traffic ticket.
And to be clear, and to be very clear, a grand jury does not hear from a defense attorney.
Not in Georgia.
Not in Georgia. There is no opportunity to defend whatever the state is presenting to the grand jurors. It's not like if we have a defense, a self-defense, an alibi defense. We don't have access to the grand jurors. It's a closed box. We don't get to get transcripts in Georgia of what takes place there. It's just an interaction between the prosecutors, the law enforcement, and the grand jury. Meaning, most things pass through there. It's very rare that they won't indict a case when the prosecutor and law enforcement are suggesting that it needs to happen and this is what happened. There's no other story being told to them. So not surprised at all that we have this indictment. I thought it'd be a little bit longer, honestly. But here we are. It's still long enough, and I guess we'll stop here, but we should, as an ending, just predict. If you had to, it's funny. If you had to guess this 23 SC case, how long will it take to resolve Donald Trump's case?
Well,
let's just gamble right now. I'll buy you a pumpkin bread. What should we?
Oh Lord, I say 2 years, 3 years, with Fulton County.
I know that's what I'm saying with
modus operandi.
And then you wonder, does he have we can talk about it later, but like whether he has an interest in it moving faster or slower.
His interest is always slow it down. Slow the gears, disrupt the gears. His being Donald Trump, disrupt the gears of justice. So we'll see. Just so everybody knows, this program is the Law Project. It's featuring Rachel Kaufman and Daniel Kane. This is our first episode. We're going to do a series of this. We're going to be with you all throughout the Trump trial. And when Young Thug's trial picks up, we're going to do that too. So the Law Project welcomes you and hopes you'll stay with us.
Yeah, you'll be learning a lot about the word
and the law.
RICO.
Yes, thank you.